Hey guys, and welcome to Monday's edition of our Mystic Road Trip. This edition is focused on magical, mystical, spiritual, holistic, all that kind of things. And I do another episode on Thursday that's specifically about tarot. My name is Kim. I am your host. I am a tarot reader and astrologer, a spiritual and wellness life coach, as well as a meditation guide. And so you can tell I'm a lover of all the things that a lot of people call woo-woo. I call just spirituality and information. Although I do dabble a little in the woo-woo. I have done some stuff on like Atlantis, and maybe in the future I'll do stuff on cryptids, and I've done things on Ouija. So occasionally I step into woo-woo. Sorry guys, I just got out of the shower and my hair is crazy. Alright. Anyways, it is Monday. And as I said, that means we do focus on magic. This episode is about eclipses. And because it's Monday, I start the podcast with Our Week in the Stars. But before we do that, do a little thing, shameless plug, housekeeping per the usual. There are ways to reach out to me through via social media. There's an email. If you're watching on YouTube, you could just comment, and that would be amazing. If you want to support the podcast, like I said, commenting, liking, sharing, subscribing, all of those things would be great. The more you interact with the video or the podcast audio itself, the more the algorithms see that people are interested, and the more they push me out to other people. So any and all interactions would be amazing. If you have a little cash and you want to kick it my way, there's ways to do that too, through the Buy Me a Coffee or my Patreon. If you want more information on this stuff and so much more, you can check out the Medium publication. And if you're into women and feminism and history, you should probably check out my other podcast called Where All the Ladies At. I also do 2 episodes a week, one about myth and legend and one about historical figures, both known and mostly unknown. So that's it for the shameless plugging and housekeeping. So let's jump into Our Week in the Stars. Alright guys, so just as a typical PSA I always do, I always say my weeks run Monday through Sunday because I post on Mondays. So with that being said, let's get started. We are actually going to start with today, Monday, April 7th. Mercury is going direct in Pisces, and Venus in Pisces is conjuncting Saturn in Pisces. So a lot of Pisces action happening, and that's okay. Pisces action is pretty cool. It can be a little delulu sometimes, but all in all, it's pretty good. So let's talk about Mercury direct in Pisces. So Mercury is about communication, right? And so that means that when it stations direct, it means it's coming out of retrograde, it's going direct, it's moving forward again, right? So, and it's in Pisces. So that's going to mean that there's going to be a lot of intuitive communication and a lot of creativity starting to flow. You know, you're going to get more clear and be able to return after, like, you know, maybe even there's been misunderstandings and stuff, but whatever happening, you're going out of the mental fog, getting clarity, and being able to move forward. You might also feel like you want to like embrace more spiritual and artistic endeavors. I think that's amazing. What I would say is, after the period of reflection in retrograde, which is what I suggest retrograde should be about, it's time to take those ideas that you've kind of reflected on and things you've worked through and move forward, right? Especially if they're creative or spiritual projects, you know. I think the only thing you really have to be maybe that's the word that came through for me, so maybe that's what I should say. I'm trying to be more intuitive with my connection with people, so sometimes my brain does things. Anyways, that's a whole different subject. Anyways, I would say the biggest thing I would caution you guys on is trying to stay grounded, you know, and practical, and still embracing your intuition. Pisces has this tendency of getting very dreamy and, like I said, a little delulu sometimes. So I think that's the only real worry you have. I would say just make sure you're revisiting ideas and plans that you kind of were unsure about during this retrograde period, and really see if they feel right anymore, right? On that same day, Venus in Pisces is going to conjunct Saturn in Pisces. So Venus is the planet of love, right? Is going to be aligned with Saturn, and that's the planet of structure and discipline. And they're both in Pisces. So it could bring that energy seems to me to be a little bit like kind of a deeper, more serious feelings. So in relationships, it can also really spark that idea of commitment, long-term goals, especially around love, finance, beauty. So if you're out there and you're thinking about maybe asking someone for their hand in marriage, this could be the day that it happens. I would say use this energy, if you're not doing something big like that, just to commit to building something pretty solid in your love life, right? Or finances or creative projects. You're going to feel a bit restricted, but that's really kind of an opportunity to kind of lay down strong foundations for the future, right? This is a good day to have conversations about boundaries and what, your future, what it looks like, what your goals are. If you have any relationship challenges, maybe this is a good day to address them, but you have to do it with a lot of maturity. Don't, because Pisces is involved, it could go a different way unless you're coming from a really mature point, right? Don't lose touch with compassion and tenderness. That's what the Pisces energy that's bringing, but if you're not careful, you can kind of sway out of it, right? Now let's move on to Tuesday, April 8th. So Venus in Pisces is going to sextile Uranus in Taurus, and the moon's going to enter Virgo. So what it all means, right? Venus in Pisces sextile. Once again, sextile is a pretty harmonious connection. It's this connection that is going to bring a blend of like stability and excitement, right? Venus in Pisces kind of wants emotional connection and beauty, and Uranus in Taurus is urging like change and innovation in areas like money and relationships. And you have to remember Taurus is ruled by Venus too, so that can play a little part in it as well. This aspect is could bring some unexpected, exciting changes in how you feel about approaching love and finances and beauty and all that. I'd say it's a good time for trying new things, whether that be in your relationship or aesthetic, how you look. Try to be as open as you can to unconventional ideas, especially when it comes to beauty and art and money making. You may also kind of experience some sudden insights about what you value and how you want to express yourself. I think with this energy, embracing flexibility is a good choice, and honestly, just being open to changes that come your way, right? On top of that, the moon is going to enter Virgo. That energy mixed with the rest, right? Moon in Virgo is like focused on practicality and health and organization. You have to get things done. You have to analyze the details. Virgos are very analytical and very detail oriented. Because of this energy coupled with it, it might be a good idea to kind of clear out clutter, organize your space, working on projects that really require details. Wedding planning, things of such nature. It's also a good time to focus on your well-being, so paying attention to your health and routines and self-care. Me and my partner just had a conversation the other day, and we were talking about like our health things, and we're both on this new health journey and everything, and we were saying to each other and not exact words, but basically like we were so happy that each of us were on our path and trying to figure out what our health looked like. Because my partner's younger than me, so it's like I'm trying to live longer, not only for myself, but because I want to spend as much time as I possibly can with them. So, yeah, so just kind of things like that. The Virgo is it supports efficiency, and this would be a good time to like tackle things you've kind of been putting off, you've been procrastinating, right? And finally, we are going to look at Saturday, April 12th, Venus direct in Pisces, Libra full moon. Now, if you want to know about the full moon, I'm going to do a little bit here, but if you go back to last week's episode, I did a full thing on the full moon and the new moon for April. So just make sure you check that out, right? So let's look at Venus direct in Pisces. Now, Mercury just went direct, right? Now Venus is going direct, and it is in Pisces. So Venus has been in retrograde, and so now it's moving forward in Pisces. So you're going to see like a shift from introspection, which is once again what I think retrogrades should be about, and reevaluation of what love means and beauty means and relationship means, to a pretty much more outward expression of affection and artistic abilities, right? Any love or financial issues are going to be cleared up if they came up during the Venus retrograde. Venus is starting to move forward, right? And you may feel, and that's, once again, guys, it's not necessarily that they were going backwards. I think that sometimes when we say that, that's what it sparks. They were just going so slow in their rotation that they looked like they were going backwards. They were just going slow, right? They had slowed down. So now they're going back into rotation. So you're going to feel more confident in your relationships and finances. It's a great time to start fresh with love or beauty projects. If you've been struggling with boundaries or self-worth, it's really a time to reinforce them. Move forward with confidence, right? Now, we have the Libra full moon. And once again, I say, like, if you want more on this, go check out my other last week's episode. It's a full workup. But, full moons are about culmination, release, illumination, and the Libra full moon is going to highlight balance and harmony and partnership. So obviously Libra is the sign of relationships, right? So it's going to bring a big focus on both personal and professional relationships, and you might find yourself kind of trying to seek a balance or clarity in your connections. I would say with this, try to find the harmony between your needs and the needs of others, right? It's a time to release anything that's out of balance in your relationships, unhealthy patterns, unrealistic expectations. Really celebrate the partnership that bring joy and balance to your life, and let go of the ones that drain your energy. It's a good time to kind of seek reconciliation or make decisions about how to move forward in a partnership. And that's kind of the energy of the full moon. Once again, like I said, go back, check out last week's episode. There's more to it than that. So that's it for our week in the stars. Hopefully all that helps you out. Let's jump into eclipses. And as I said, I misspoke. I was thinking about this last new moon, which was a solar eclipse. I think we're out of eclipse season. I would have to check. Look, I know a lot about astrology, guys, but sometimes the dates and stuff, my brain doesn't hold everything. But I think that was the last one in the cycle until we get to the next eclipse season. So why not learn now how we can handle the next eclipse season, right? So we're going to both look at the solar and the lunar, right? And what we can get it from these astronomical events, right? So let's look at, first, let's start with just the basics. So what is eclipse? It's basically, eclipse happens when one celestial body, like the moon or the earth, moves into the shadow of another, right? And there are two types. You have the solar, which happens when the moon passes between the earth and the sun, blocking the sun's light. And a lunar eclipse occurs when the earth moves between the sun and the moon, right? And it casts a shadow on the moon, and sometimes turning it like a deep red. Both events are pretty powerful, and we're going to talk about that, right? So let's look at the solar eclipse first, right? So solar eclipses are cosmic resets. They happen when the moon obscures the sun, as I said, and for a brief moment. They don't really last. We experience a kind of darkness. A full solar eclipse is not as prominent as, a full lunar eclipse, I think, is how it goes. It's when we think about the eclipses, though, we can't think of it just as like we lost sun for a few minutes. It's basically a potential for new beginnings, right? It's like a reset button, right? So in the magical and spiritual world, solar eclipses are kind of seen as a time of very powerful transformation and setting intentions. They symbolize fresh starts and new chapters. If you kind of have been feeling stagnant or stuck, a solar eclipse is the perfect time to make some pretty bold moves, embrace change, and manifest your desires, right? bold action, planting seeds. It's not about charging forward. There is an element of reflection involved to it too, right? Because the eclipse invites us to reconsider where we're going and why. It's time to set goals and align with our true purpose. Let go of what no longer serves us, and really try to make room for growth, right? The lunar eclipse, on the other hand, is culminations and endings and revelations. These eclipses are full of emotional energy, right? The moon is emotion, and they kind of shine lights on hidden truths. A lunar eclipse happens, of course, like I said, when the Earth blocks the sun's light from reaching the moon. And that creates a pretty dramatic shadow. The shadow symbolizes things we've kept hidden, deep emotions, repressed memories, or even the truth about situations that's kind of been brewing under the surface, but we really haven't wanted to talk about it. Now, the spiritual, magical properties of a lunar eclipse really revolve around emotional release and healing. Right? They encourage us to kind of let go of past baggage and forgive ourselves, and just kind of try to move forward like unburdened by all that weight. Many people feel really deep emotional cleansing during lunar eclipses. It's basically also a really good time to reflect on things and patterns that you just want to get rid of. Whether that's work, relationships, whatever it is, even your inner self. So I want to talk a little bit. That's kind of the breakdown of the powers and what those eclipses are, right? I want to talk a little bit about eclipses in cultural lore and myth, right? Because they do play a big part in a lot of mythology. So, for instance, in the Norse mythology, a solar eclipse was said to happen when the wolf Fenrir chased and caught the sun, right? The Vikings absolutely believed this was a sign of imminent doom or a challenge that needed to be overcome, right? On the flip side, in ancient Chinese culture, eclipses were seen as the work of celestial dragons that devoured the sun or the moon, right? And they would bang pots and make noises to drive away the dragon and restore balance. So similar ideas, but different reactions, right? For the Mayan civilization, eclipses were powerful, powerful omens. The Mayans believed the sun and the moon were temporarily born during an eclipse, and this kind of symbolized a time of spiritual renewal. They would often have rituals and ceremonies that honor this event. So I think it's really interesting that the Chinese and the Norse were very much like, oh my God, it's a portent of doom or bad happenings. But the Mayans were like, no, this is just a rebirth. So the difference in how the cultures handled these things is very interesting. But in the end, the basic is that all these eclipses for them were very momentous, right? So what about astrological? Now, I work with astrology, right? And I'm not I'm taking some courses to extend my knowledge. I know a lot, but there's always more to learn, right? You know, because I am into astrology and tarot, I can't really let the eclipse conversation go without talking about how the events impact us on a much deeper and cosmic level, right? Eclipses are powerful omens and bringers of change. And they really can be very potent if they happen to fall in your personal birth chart. Now, solar eclipses are generally associated with the state of a new chapter, as I said, shifts and everything. Lunar eclipses are emotional breakthroughs, like I said. Both type of eclipse can act as kind of like tipping points in our lives, times when we feel called to step back or step up or whatever, right? If you want to go deeper with this, it's useful to look at the nodes of the moon and the north. So that's the north and the south nodes, right? Because eclipses always occur near these points. The north node represents kind of your soul's purpose, while the south node shows what you need to release, right? And they can bring you closer to your higher self, to your art, to your architecture. Now, I say architecture because this is how I look at the birth chart. And I've said this, I think, in a couple of different times. So your birth chart is kind of like your blueprint, right? This is where everything was. These are the things, everything. Of course, so the blueprint, and then life is kind of like the architect that comes in and kind of makes edits and choice movements, right? So it's not that things change, it's that life kind of skews things a little bit, right? So my ultimate goal is to get back to my original blueprint without all the trauma and all the construction that came with society and my family and things that happened and all that stuff, right? My goal is to get back to that core blueprint, and that's how I look at it. So how can we do rituals and things during these, right? That's the big question a lot of people ask. Now, there are a few practices you can engage. For the solar eclipse, I would say setting new intentions is a great one. Write down your goals, visualize what you want, do however you like to do it. Because it's a solar eclipse, honestly, you know me. If you've listened or watched any of the other podcasts, episodes, you know that I'm a real big fan of writing things down and lighting them on fire. And with the solar eclipse, because it is attached to the sun, that could be a really great tool for you. With the lunar, letting go and release, so cord cutting, journaling out your feelings, all that kind of stuff, all of that can be amazingly done. Meditation and grounding is good for either eclipse. Honestly, meditation and grounding is just good, period, right? Allow whatever energies come with the eclipse to kind of clear your mind and move you towards clarity. Cleansing your space during both, right? Whether that's new beginnings or setting stuff free, either one is great. You can, use sage or Palo Santo, or you can use black tourmaline or all of these other things, and just kind of cleanse your space of any of the negative energy, really trying to clear it and bring in the higher vibrations, right? And that's a little look at eclipses. Now, I do think that it's important to have this in your pocket for the next batch. And just remember, like, I know that people, freak out about certain things, retrogrades or eclipses, and because it's big energy. But what I would say is that they're not to be scared. Like, working with the universe is important, and working with the energies. And that's kind of what's going to help you find your highest truth, more authentic self, move you back to your blueprint. And that's it for this week, guys. That's the eclipse. I hope you learned something, gotten a little inspired, and that you're set for the next group of eclipses that'll happen later in the year. Yeah, and that's it. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, guys, if you want to reach out to me, there's ways to do that. There's also ways to support the podcast. At the very least, I would really appreciate like, comment, share, follow, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. There's also ways to do it financially. Those are in the description box. If you would like to learn more about this topic and others, make sure you check out the Medium publication. And if you're into women, feminism, and history, I definitely think you should check out Where All the Ladies At. It's a amazing, well, I'm speaking as the person who creates it. It's got a lot of really cool stuff. We learn a lot about some really badass ladies. And don't forget to check out Thursday's episode on our Mystic Road Trip, where I concentrate solely on a tarot card a week, and we're in the Suit of Swords, so woo woo. Yeah, and as always, guys, stay curious, stay safe, stay blessed.